Hi and welcome to another training video. Today we're going to take a look at a Chandoo challenge, and what I mean by this is Chandoo, who you probably all know from YouTube. He set a challenge to people asking if we could find the last non-blank in a looked up row. Now, yep, this is the sample data that he gave, and just to explain what he means is if you're looking up 2015 as an account number, for example, he doesn't want the value returned to be cash or bank. He wants it to be freedom, which is the last non-blank. So if we're looking up 2014, we'd expect the word bank or whatever data is in that particular cell to be returned. Now, Chandoo has obviously come up now and presented his video with the answer. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how you can do this using VBA. So I've made a copy of that, and what I'm going to do is if I type in something in there, when I press enter, it's now going to look up and find 2010, and it's going to return the value which is the last non-blank. So let's get started. I've made some VBA on this, and here's the VBA. Now you'll notice that it's actually a private on a sub worksheet, and the action is the selection change. So when I go into that cell there, actually when I change the selection, so the selection is now the cell below, in other words when I press enter, that's what executes the code. That's what makes the code run. Let's have a look at the code itself now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to size that so it fits half the screen, so we can see these two side by side. So the first line of code is asking if the intersection between the target, in other words the cell that I've just changed the selection to, and the range H2, so that's the cell that's below the one with the thing we're looking up in. So here's H2. So if that intersection, in other words H2 and the cell that's now been selected, if it's nothing, in other words if it's not that cell that's been selected, then exit the subroutine. So that will jump straight out of the subroutine. So actually this code is running every single time the selection changes, but it's just quickly having a look and seeing if the selected cell is now H2, and if it's not, it jumps out the routine. So it's not actually running anything that's intensive. I've then set a couple of variables, and I've set TR, which is my total rows within my range of data, and I've set TC, which is total columns. Yep. And I've now then defined the variables. So I've said the active cell offset, so this is obviously my active cell because it's only running when that cell is selected. So the active cell offset, no row offset, but 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's going to select B2, but it's not selecting B2, it's just looking at B2, and it's looking at B2 and counting the rows. For the next one down, it's looking at B2 and counting the columns, both of them within the current region. So if I click on B2 and do Control asterisk, that will select my current region. You'll understand when you come on to doing VBA the difference between Control asterisk and Control A. Actually in Excel they both do exactly the same thing, but the command itself is slightly different. So if you did that when you're recording a macro, if you did Control A, what it would do, it would select that particular range and hard code that into the macro. If you did Control asterisk, it would then do current region. So it would be that range, however big it is when you run the macro, not when you record the macro. Okay, so that's important. So I've got the rows counted and I've got the columns counted. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this SC, which is my selection cell, and that's the range H1, and it's the address of H1. So that's H1 here, and the reason I've done that is so that I can refer to it later on here, because I'm referring to it within my loop as the offset. So I'm actually referring to this cell here as SC and not the one that's now selected. Okay, let's have a look and see now what that does. So X equals 1. And now I've got to do until the range offset value is the same as SC's value. So from this cell here, if the offset first of all is 1 row down and -6, it's looking at that cell there and comparing to see if they're the same. If not, it just adds another 1 and loops back, does it again. So now X is 2, so it now goes down 1, 2 and 6 across, and it checks to see if they're the same. Now this time they are the same, so it then comes out of the loop and carries on. Now what it does is I set Y being 1 to TC. So TC is my total columns. So now what it's going to do is it's going to come down however many it comes till it finds that. And now it's going to look at each of these in turn across the entire range of the total number of columns. Now this is important, and I'll show you that later on, because it specifically said find the last non-blank. Now the challenge itself didn't say that there might not be a blank in there and then some data and then another blank. So this would count as a cell with data. So what I'm actually doing is I'm writing each of these into that cell on top of each other. Yeah. So that's how it does it. When we get down to the end, that's basically the end of the routine. If you liked the video, if you found it useful, don't forget to like and subscribe down below, and thank you for listening.